Hey everybody, welcome back to O-Taste Tennessee. Today in this video, I'm going to be sharing two recipes. I'm not sure I'll have a video out next week, so I'm going to go ahead and share two recipes in this video because they kind of go hand in hand together. The first recipe we're going to be sharing is the lasagna. I'm going to be making homemade sourdough noodles, so that will be the main recipe in that. And then I'm going to be making a focaccia bread to go along with it. I make this bread quite often, at least once a week, when I run out of sandwich bread. It is super easy, it's all yeast, and it pairs really well with lasagna, but we use it a lot as sandwich bread. So let's get started. So to start off with our noodles, you're going to need to take 1.5 cups of flour. You can do this in a bowl, or as you see here, I'm doing it on the counter. Eventually, it's probably going to end up on the counter anyway, so I just find it's easier just to go ahead and start out with that. You're going to go ahead and get 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. You're going to make a well with that so that you have like a little hole in the middle, and you're going to take 2 large eggs and 1/2 cup of sourdough. As you can see here, my sourdough is pretty thick. I should have probably thinned it out some. I had fed it this morning, and I apparently didn't add enough water to it, but it's still going to work just fine. And then I'm going to take my little chopper, and I'm going to try to combine all of the eggs and the sourdough so that they're not running off of my counter, and then I'm going to get in there with my hands, and then we will let this sit for a minimum of 30 minutes, but it can sit up to 2 hours. And you're just going to put that in cellophane and just sit it to the side while you prepare all of your other ingredients. So your goal for the pasta, you do not want this to be dry, so I'm going to actually flip over my flour surface that I had there and go ahead and on a clean surface, you're going to go ahead and knead that just a little bit. You just want to make sure it's well combined. Now I did have, obviously I had the noodle stuff on my hands because I was mixing it from start. And I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands here, and then I'm going to show you that it needs to be a little sticky, tacky, but it does not need to be so much that you get it all over your hand when you touch it. You're going to see here that, see, I can poke it easily, and it does not stick to my hands. So that's what you want. You do not want this so sticky that you can't work with it, but you want it to still be tacky. You don't want it to be dry. Now, everybody has a preference in how they want their lasagna, and I do mine different all the time. I'm going to go ahead and chop up an onion, and I'm going to saute that in the pan before I do much of anything else. And I'm actually going to be adding mushrooms to mine. Now, I know some people don't like mushrooms, so this is an optional step. You do not have to put mushrooms in it. It's going to taste great without the mushrooms, but I'm going to add mushrooms to mine. I don't add mushrooms every time, but I had them in the fridge, so I'm going to add those to this. And I like to wash mine. I know they say mushrooms you don't have to wash, you just need to pat the dirt off of them, but I ain't all about that. I'm going to wash mine, and then I do end up patting them dry because I don't want all the extra liquid on my mushrooms. I am really big into textures and things like that, and I know mushrooms shrink when they are cooked, but I'm actually going to chop my mushrooms some so that when they do cook, they turn into really small chunks of mushrooms, and you're not getting like a whole mushroom in a bite, because I am really funny when it comes to textures, and I just don't like that. And I know a lot of times that's why a lot of people don't like mushrooms, because they do give off a little different texture. Here is something that a lot of people don't know about us. We do not buy paper towels. As you can see here, I have a rough piece of cloth, and we have nice paper towels that is cloth, and we have just like work around the house in the kitchen, like wiping mushrooms off paper towels. So that is something about us that a lot of people don't know. At the first of the year, we decided that we wasn't going to buy paper towels. I think in my last video, I might have had a thing of paper towels sitting on the counter, but that was because I was watching my brother's dogs, and I didn't want to use my everyday kitchen paper towels if they was to have had an accident or something. So I am adding some seasoning back there to my onions, and I think a lot of times you can add salt to something and it brings out the natural flavor of whatever you're cooking. So like onions, I think if you salt those and you give them a little bit of garlic, it just brings out some of that flavor in them. So I'm actually going to put salt, pepper, garlic, and Italian seasoning in my onions while they cook. So like I said earlier in the video, mushrooms is optional. And here is where this is an optional step too. I'm going to be using a pound of ground beef, and I'm going to be using some Italian sausage. I don't always put Italian sausage in it, but today I thought I would add just a little bit more. We do like our lasagna or our spaghetti. We do like it a little meatier than most. Most people like it a little saucy, but we are a family that likes it to be a little bit more meatier. I get questions all the time about my ground beef there, and that is just an organic grass-fed ground beef. A lot of people have never seen it in a package like that, but I have got questions about that, and that's just organic ground beef. So this is going to be the second recipe that I'm going to be sharing, and this is the focaccia bread. You're going to need around 400 grams of bread flour. Then you're going to need 320 grams of warm water. You're going to need about 8 grams of salt, about 7 grams of active yeast, and then you're going to need 15 grams of oil. This bread is super simple. We like to use it and make sandwiches out of it, but it's got so many things you can do different to it, and I may do a series on that one day later on in YouTube of what you can do with focaccia bread, but today we're going to be making Italian urban cheese. So once you get all of the ingredients added to the bowl, I'm not waiting for my yeast to activate or anything. I'm just dumping everything together. You're going to roughly stir that with a wooden spoon or your hands. And you want to make sure everything gets well combined, but you don't have to sit and knead it or anything. And then you're going to cover that with cellophane. You're going to let that sit for about an hour until it gets a little bigger. It's not that it like gets real big and it doubles in size and all this. You can tell that it has grew some, but it is not something that's going to rise and be overflowing your bowl. So as I've said in another video, I like to use Rao's pasta sauce. I'm not sure if I'm saying that name right, but I like to use the garlic and herb blend, and I have 2 jars, obviously you've seen that, but I actually only ended up using 1 jar of that, and I felt like that was plenty enough for me. But if you like it saucier, you can either cut back on your meat or you can add more sauce to it. I'm going to go ahead and let this simmer on the stove for quite some time while I go ahead and prepare my noodles and everything else that I have going on. So I think that I've done this before in another video. I'm not real sure. I can't remember. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and take this mozzarella cheese. I'm not picky about what cheese goes in my lasagna because I just love cheese. And you'll see that in a few minutes when we start assembling the lasagna. But if you are not picky, you can go ahead and get bagged shredded cheese already. Or if you have this block cheese like I'm doing, I'm just going to throw that into a food processor. The food processor that I'm using is not going to give it like shredded cheese, but I do know that my bigger food processor does have an attachment that you can use that will shred it like cheese. I don't really care the shape of the cheese, so I'm just using this small one. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get ready and start working my noodles. I am going to put down a piece of parchment paper and I'm going to sprinkle some flour, and I'm not going to sprinkle a lot of flour, but this is going to work my whole batch of noodles. And if you got your life together while you're in the kitchen, you want to go ahead and get you a pot with some water on so that it can start boiling. As you can see here, I didn't think about my water until after my noodles was ready to go in the water. So you're going to want to put some water on to boil for your noodles. And as you can see here, I didn't sprinkle a lot of flour down, but that's going to be plenty. And then I'm going to be using an attachment that I got off of Amazon, but I haven't had this attachment too awful long. I've just had it for about maybe 6 months. And it does make it a lot easier. It has some attachments that you can make spaghetti noodles, Alfredo noodles, flat noodles. So I'm going to be using that today, but I'm also going to show you how to do it without the attachment, because I didn't always have this, and I always did it by hand. So you can do it by hand, but this is a little quicker and easier, but I'm going to show you both ways. You're going to take that, and I like to cut mine in smaller pieces because I don't like to work with a big noodle. It just seems like it's harder once you cook them, and once you get them, trying to get them in the pan, it just seems like it's harder. So I would rather have more noodles than to have really big noodles. So this right here is the noodle that I'm working by hand. You're going to take one of those pieces and you're just going to flatten that out until it is almost see-through thin. You do not want this to be thick at all because it does get thicker as it cooks. So you want that to be really thin, and if that was me, I would take a knife and I would cut down the center of that and make it 2 pieces. So as you see here, it's super simple. You just take those small pieces, you run it through. I like to run it through twice, but this attachment does have different thicknesses on it. But I like to run it through twice just to make sure, and if I have any big pieces after it flattens out, I'll go ahead and cut those in half. Because like I said, I don't like to work with a big piece of noodle, because once you start cooking it, it's harder to work with. And as you can see, you see me, if I feel like the dough is a little stickier than some, you can see I am rolling it in that flour because I don't want it to stick to my machine, and then I don't want it to be so sticky that when I hit the water with when it's boiling, that it just crumbles. So you want to make sure it's dry enough, but you don't want it too dry. So that's going to be your hardest part in making sure your noodle isn't too dry or too sticky. You're going to want to salt your water when you put it on to boil. Now, they always say that being in the kitchen is fun, but they never said it was easy. So this is a lot harder than just opening a box of noodles and pouring them in a pot with boiling water. So when you make homemade noodles, you have to worry about your noodles sticking together after they get out of the water. And I have made that mistake of just dumping them in a bowl and hoping for the best. Don't do that, because they will stick together and you will not get them apart, and you will have a glob of noodles, and all that hard work will be useless. So what I do here is they do not take long to cook at all in the water after you boil them. So you leave them in there for not even a minute, and you're basically just getting your noodles to be a fast cook, because they're going to finish cooking, like I said, in the oven with your lasagna. So you're going to just take those in and dump them in the water, and the boiling water, of course, and then you're going to just kind of toss them around a little bit. You'll see that they don't stay long in the water. Then you're going to take that out, and I like to brush my noodles with a little bit of oil so that they don't stick together when you are layering them on. I am going to be using some ricotta cheese, and I like to flavor my ricotta cheese. I don't know if you've ever had ricotta cheese, but it is a bland, creamy cheese. So I'm going to put some salt and pepper and some garlic powder in my ricotta and stir it up real well. I have never used this brand of ricotta cheese, and it is actually a drier consistency than I have ever used. Most of the time I can spread ricotta, but as you see, when I put the lasagna together, I actually crumble my ricotta cheese. So normally I would spread it. As you see, though, I'm going to crumble it. I don't actually use ricotta cheese in every lasagna that I do. I do use it a lot, but if I don't have it, it ain't gonna stop me from making lasagna. But I know a lot of people don't even know what ricotta cheese is because it is not a common cheese. But if you eat a lasagna in an Italian restaurant, more than likely it has got a ricotta cheese in it. It's supposed to help make it creamier. Like I said, I've never used this brand before, and as you can see, it's not a creamy cheese. It was in perfect date. It was still sealed. I obviously paid money for it, so I am not going to let it go to waste, even though it is not creamy like it normally is. I baked this on 350 for around 30 minutes. You could probably bake it on 400 and do it a little less time. It is already done. I mean, all your meat is cooked. You're just basically melting your cheese all the way through. And the bread is baked at 350 for around 15 to 25 minutes. I hope y'all will try out these recipes. Let me know if you do. Thanks for watching.